Hey family, welcome back to Black Queen Revenge. We've got a unique story for you today, full of emotion and real-life drama. If you love these stories, please like, comment, subscribe, and share your ideas for future videos. So, let's begin. A thin mist clings to the peaks like ghostly lace. The road winds through dense pine forests, a serpentine ribbon of asphalt cutting through ancient wilderness. A black sedan moves slowly, carefully navigating the curves. Inside, Zanaya, 40s, grips the steering wheel with hands that have long since lost their softness. 2 years of grief have etched fine lines around her eyes, but she holds herself with a quiet dignity, her dark hijab framing a face that has known too much sorrow. 2 years. 2 years since they buried Lucian. 2 years since the world went quiet. Everyone said the mountain estate would be good for her, a place of healing. They were wrong. Every memory there was a shard of glass in her heart. She turns onto the private driveway, the tires crunching on gravel overgrown with weeds at the edges. She prepares herself for decay, for the visual proof that life had stopped when Lucian's heart did. But as the wooden gate comes into view, she slows the car to a crawl, then stops entirely. Her forehead wrinkles in confusion. The gate stands proud and straight, its dark stain fresh, the iron latch gleaming without a speck of rust. No vines creep over it, no moss clings to its posts. Zanaya steps out of the car, the cold mountain air biting through her modest dress. She approaches the gate as one might approach a sleeping predator, cautiously, every sense alert. Then she sees the garden. Lucian's roses, the rare Eden climbers he'd nurtured from cuttings sent from France, the delicate moonlight teas he'd babied through harsh winters. They should be a graveyard of thorny skeletons. Instead, they are a symphony of life. Blooms burst in explosions of crimson, ivory, and buttery yellow. The foliage is lush, emerald green, without a single yellow leaf. The soil is dark, rich, and visibly damp. Someone has watered them. This morning. A coldness that has nothing to do with the mountain air seeps into her bones. This isn't neglect. This is care. Meticulous, expensive, constant care. Her mind races through possibilities. Cassius, Lucian's cousin, he had a key. But Cassius was a man of grand schemes and shallow pockets, always temporarily embarrassed and quick to ask for a loan. The idea of him diligently tending a garden 2 hours from the city was laughable. With a key that turns too smoothly and a lock too clean, she pushes the gate open. The gravel path is raked, the ornamental grasses are trimmed. On the porch, a pair of Lucian's leather house slippers sit, aligned, as if waiting for their owner to step into them. The violation is profound. This isn't trespassing. This is colonization. She presses her ear to the solid oak front door. Silence. But it's the silence of an occupied house, not an empty one. The silence of held breath. Her own key slides in. The door swings open without a sound. The scent that washes over her stops her in the threshold. Lavender and beeswax, Lucian's specific blend for polishing the oak floors, the smell of their life together. The living room is a frozen photograph from a happier time. Everything is in place, the Anatolian rug perfectly centered, the books on the shelves arranged by color as Lucian liked them, the cushions on the Chesterfield sofa plumped. A crystal vase on the walnut dining table holds a spray of fresh white hydrangeas. No dust dances in the sunbeams, no cobwebs grace the corners. Zanaya moves through her own house like a phantom. The kitchen gleams. She opens the sub-zero refrigerator. It hums with life, packed with organic produce, artisanal cheeses, a bottle of the Sancerre Lucian loved. The expiration dates are all within the week. She closes the door, leaning against it as a wave of nausea hits her. This isn't a squatter. A squatter doesn't stock Île-de-France Brie. This is someone with means, with taste, who has moved into her life and is living it better than she ever could. Fear curdles in her stomach, but beneath it, something hotter and harder begins to stir. Anger, a fierce, protective rage. This house is the last tangible relic of her love. These walls hold the echoes of Lucian's laughter, and someone is defiling it. Then she remembers the vault. Lucian was a man who believed in belts, suspenders, and a backup pair of pants. In his study, behind a section of custom-built bookshelf, was a hidden room, his nerve center. It housed the server for a comprehensive, nearly invisible security system. Tiny cameras and smoke detectors in clock faces in the frames of artwork. She takes the stairs two at a time, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The study door is open. The room is immaculate. The large partner's desk is clear, except for a pristine blotter and a Mont Blanc pen in its stand. She goes to the bookshelf, her fingers finding the familiar, almost imperceptible seam. She presses a specific spot in the grain of the oak. A soft, hydraulic hiss, and the shelf swings inward. The air in the hidden room is still and cool. The server rack blinks with dormant green lights. She slips inside, the shelf closing behind her with a definitive thud. In the blue glow of the rack lights, she powers up the main console. The monitors flare to life. She accesses the archive, her fingers clumsy on the keyboard. She navigates to the previous evening's footage from the living room. The screen shows an empty room in time-lapse. Then, the front door opens. Cassius walks in. He's wearing one of Lucian's linen shirts, the one from Bermuda Zanaya had bought him. He carries a bag of groceries with the logo of the expensive market in town. He moves with an easy, proprietary air, dropping keys into the Chinese porcelain bowl on the entry table. Lucian's bowl. Zanaya's jaw tightens. So it was him, the leech, living large on her property while crying poverty. The betrayal is sharp, but expected. Then Cassius calls out, "Sweetheart, I'm back." And she appears at the top of the stairs. Kaisa, Zanaya's best friend since university, the one who held her hair back when she was sick in college, the one who was her maid of honor, the one who slept in the guest room for a week after Lucian died, bringing her tea and holding her when she wept. Kaisa descends the staircase in a silk robe Zanaya recognizes. It was a gift from Lucian for Zanaya's birthday, but she'd never worn it, finding it too delicate. Kaisa had admired it once. Now it drapes her familiar form. She smiles at Cassius, a warm, intimate smile, and crosses to him. She takes a baguette from the grocery bag, breaks off the end, and pops it in his mouth. He kisses her flour-dusted fingers. Zanaya watches, numb, as they move through the kitchen, preparing a meal together, laughing at a private joke. They open the Sancerre, they sit at her dining table under her chandelier and eat off her wedding china. The domesticity of the scene is more violent than any act of vandalism. Then their conversation shifts. The easy banter fades. Cassius pours more wine. Cassius, on recording, "It's almost surreal, isn't it, to finally be living the life we planned?"
We had to be patient. These things, they can't be rushed. The timing had to be perfect. And it was. The dosage, the intervals. Even Evans was convinced. A tragic sudden failure, he said. Seen it 100 times. A cold so absolute it burns, spreads from Zanaya's core to her extremities. She stops breathing. Don't. Not even here. The walls have ears, Cassius. Lucian was paranoid for a reason. The walls have cameras, you mean? But they've been dead for 2 years. The power's on a separate bill. I canceled it the week after. No one's watching, my love. We're ghosts in our own castle. He reaches across the table, takes her hand. His thumb strokes her knuckle. We gave him a gentle end, more than he deserved. He was going to cut me out, Cassius, his own blood, after everything I did for the business. And he was going to let Sanea give this place to some charitable trust, let it rot. We saved it. We saved ourselves. This is our reward for our patience, for our precision. She leans forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The foxglove tincture was brilliant, slow, cumulative, mimics arrhythmia so perfectly. And that fool Evans was so deep in gambling debt to your associates, he'd have signed anything. Cassius smiles, a smug, ugly thing. To us, to the future we earned. They clink glasses. The recording continues, but Zanea doesn't hear it. The world has narrowed to the pixels on the screen, to the two faces of the people who murdered her husband and were now toasting with his wine in his house. Lucian didn't have a heart attack. He was poisoned, slowly, deliberately, by the cousin he helped raise and the woman Zanea called sister. The nausea returns, volcanic. She barely makes it to a small waste bin in the corner before she vomits, the convulsions racking her body. When she's empty, she stays slumped on the floor, tears of rage and horror streaming silently down her face. A sound pierces her stupor, the distinct crunch of tires on gravel, an engine. She scrambles to the live feeds. A white Range Rover is at the gate. Cassius is driving. Kaisa is in the passenger seat, applying lipstick in the visor mirror. They're back. Panic, clean and electric, jolts through her. Her car is parked blatantly in the circular driveway. They will see it instantly. She hears the car doors slam, hears the footsteps on the gravel, then stopping. Cassius, off camera, from porch mic. What the hell? Zanea's car. Kaisa, off camera. She's supposed to be in Savannah with her mother all week. I spoke to her yesterday. Cassius, off camera. Well, she's here, or she was. The front door opens. Heavy footsteps in the foyer. Cassius, calling out. Zanea, you here? It's Cassius. Silence. Then more urgent footsteps. Kaisa, whispering, close to a mic. Find her, Cassius. If she's been here, if she's seen... Cassius, muttering, check downstairs. I'll take the study. Zanea's blood turns to ice. The study. The bookshelf. She looks around the small, windless room. No exit, just the door behind the shelf. A door that only locks from the inside, but is far from soundproof. She hears him enter the study. Hears his breathing. She shrinks into the corner behind the server rack, pulling her knees to her chest, making herself small. For a long minute, there is only silence from the other side of the wall. Then a slow scraping sound. He's examining the bookshelf, running his hands along it. Cassius, muffled through the wall. Kaisa, get up here. Footsteps running up the stairs. Kaisa, breathless. What? Cassius, the bookshelf. It's the mechanism. It's been used recently. Look, the dust is disturbed here. Kaisa, voice tight with panic. The vault. She's in the vault. Cassius, impossible. She doesn't know about it. Lucian would never. Kaisa, he told her everything, Cassius. You know he did. He was besotted with her. Open it. A series of clicks and thumps. He's working the hidden latch from the outside. Zanea knows it. He helped Lucian install it. The bookshelf shudders, begins to swing inward. Zanea's eyes dart around the dark room. There's a ventilation grate in the low ceiling, a small, square aluminum cover. As the door opens a sliver, light from the study spills in. She moves. Silently, swiftly, she climbs onto the server rack, ignoring the bite of sharp edges into her palms. She pushes at the grate. It's held by old, corroded screws. The door opens wider. Cassius's silhouette fills the opening. With a desperate, silent prayer, she throws her shoulder against the grate. With a shriek of protesting metal, it gives way, swinging up into the duct. She hauls herself up, scrambling into the tight, dark space, just as Cassius steps into the room, his flashlight beam sweeping the empty floor. Empty? Kaisa, pushing past him. She was here. She had to be. The grate! She points her phone light at the ceiling.
The dark square of the open duct gapes back at them. Cassius, cursing. She's in the vents. The little mouse is in the walls. Zanea doesn't wait. She crawls, ignoring the dust choking her, the screws tearing her clothes and skin. The duct is a maze, but Lucian had shown her the blueprint once, joking about making an escape route. She follows memory more than sight. She emerges into a second-floor linen closet, tumbling out onto a pile of towels. She listens. Their voices are downstairs now, arguing. She'll go to the police. With what? A story about a creepy house? We'll say she's unhinged with grief. We'll have Evans back us up. We'll say she's been having episodes. Zanea creeps to a window. It's a 20-foot drop to a manicured hedge. No choice. She opens the window, swings her legs out, and lets go. The landing is brutal. Branches snap, thorns rip at her arms and face. The air is driven from her lungs. She lies in the mulch for a count of 3, gasping. Then she's up and running, barefoot, through the rose garden, through the gate, and onto the dark mountain road. She doesn't look back. She runs until her lungs are fire and her feet are bloody. A roadside diner appears like a mirage in the damp night. Inside, she uses the po-phone. She calls a cab company from a faded sticker on the wall, gives them the crossroads, and asks to be taken to the next town over. No, she doesn't want a receipt. In the back of the worn cab, shivering under a coarse blanket the driver offered, the shock begins to recede. In its place, a cold, crystalline clarity forms. Grief was a passive state. This betrayal, this murder, demands action. They think she's a frightened mouse, a clueless widow, as Kaisa had called her on the recording. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The motel she chooses is the kind of place that takes cash and doesn't ask for ID. The room smells of mildew and stale cigarettes. She locks the door, chains it, and slides to the floor. For the first time since the funeral, she doesn't cry. She plans. First, she needs evidence that will stand in court. The recording is a start, but it's illegally obtained. She needs a paper trail, a medical trail. Dr. Evans, the compromised family doctor, he's the key. The next morning, using cash from an ATM, withdrawing the maximum, knowing Cassius might try to freeze her accounts, she buys nondescript clothes from a thrift store. Jeans, a plain sweater, a dark headscarf. She buys a cheap prepaid phone. She becomes invisible. She finds Evans not in Florida, but in a modest assisted living facility an hour from the city. Retirement hadn't been kind. He looks shrunken, his hands trembling with a fine palsy. When she sits across from him in the sunroom and says her name, the color drains from his face. Dr. Evans. Mrs. Blackwood, I heard about your loss. A tragedy. Xenia. Voice low, steady. We both know it wasn't a tragedy, Doctor. It was a transaction, and you were the notary. He tries to bluster, to stand, but his legs won't hold him. She places a single sheet of paper on the table between them. It's a printout of a bank transfer, 2 years ago, from a shell company she'd traced back to Cassius to an offshore account in Evan's daughter's name, a sum large enough to erase his gambling debts. Cassius is unraveling, he's panicking, and when he falls, he'll throw anyone he can under the bus to save himself. You'll be first, an easy target, the disgraced doctor who signed a false certificate. Evans breaks. It's not theatrical, it's a quiet crumbling, like a sandcastle at tide's edge. He tells her everything. Cassius came to him with concerns, said Lucian was experimenting with dangerous herbal supplements, was refusing proper care, pressured him, then threatened him, gave him a vial of clear liquid to add to the medication bottle Kaisa would bring over, said it was a harmless sedative to make Lucian compliant so they could get him real help. He knew it wasn't harmless, but the debt, the threats to his license, his daughter's future, he signed the death certificate. Cardiac arrest due to acute myocardial infarction. He never asked for the toxicology report that was never ordered. He gives her the name of the specialty pharmacy that compounded the supplements for Cassius. The pharmacy is in an upscale medical plaza. The pharmacist is wary, protected by HIPAA laws. But Xenia isn't asking for records, she's telling a story. A story about a wrongful death lawsuit, about a grieving widow subpoenaing every pharmacy her husband ever used, about the media scrutiny that will follow. She slides an envelope across the counter. Not a bribe, a donation to the pharmacy's charity fund, a substantial one. The pharmacist leaves, returns 10 minutes later with a printed transaction history. One recurring prescription filled monthly in the year before Lucian's death. Digitalis purpurea tincture. Concentration 5 milligrams per milliliter. Prescribing physician Dr. A. Evans. Patient L. Blackwood. Person picking up K. Solano. Relationship cousin. Foxglove. In that concentration, a slow cumulative poison. Symptoms nausea, visual disturbances, confusion, arrhythmia, cardiac arrest. The murder weapon on official paper. Now she has the means. She needs the opportunity to make them confess to a third party. But first, she needs to wear them down, to turn their greed and guilt against each other. She returns to her Atlanta home, performing the role of the fragile widow once more. She calls Kaisa, her voice weak and trembling. Kaisa, I went to the estate. I had to, but something happened. I saw something. Lucian, I think his spirit is there. He's angry. She spins a tale of shadows and cold spots and the smell of his cologne. She plays perfectly into their perception of her, superstitious, emotional, weak. Kaisa swallows it whole, her voice oozing sympathy. She and Cassius will go check on the house, she promises. They'll cleanse it for her. Thank you. You're such a good friend. I don't know what I'd do without you. The hypocrisy tastes like ash in her mouth. That evening, Cassius and Kaisa visit, a united front of concern. They've brought a casserole. While Kaisa fusses in the kitchen, Xenia accidentally leaves a manila folder on the coffee table next to Cassius. The tab reads, Blackwood Estate Security System Diagnostic Log. Access attempts. She watches from the hallway as his eyes fall on it. He goes still. He doesn't touch it, but his gaze is locked. When Kaisa returns, he gives a minute shake of his head, his eyes darting to the folder. Kaisa's smile stiffens. The seed is planted. Later that night, Xenia uses her burner phone. To Cassius. The security system has a fail-safe, a 72-hour cache. It sends an alert when accessed. Who accessed it today, Cassius? To Kaisa, from a different number. He's been withdrawing large sums, cash. He has a passport you don't know about. He's preparing an exit. Are you his partner or his luggage? She imagines their night, the silent suspicions, the frantic checking of accounts, the whispered accusations that are no longer whispers. The next strike is more elegant. She accesses the automated landscaping service account for the estate. With a few clicks, she schedules work for the following afternoon. Then she calls the service, posing as Kaisa, and cancels it, saying they'll be out of town. The day arrives. Cassius and Kaisa, now living full-time at the estate in their arrogance, are having lunch on the terrace when a truck arrives. 3 men with leaf blowers and hedge trimmers. An argument erupts on the lawn, captured beautifully by the estate's external cameras, which Xenia has quietly reactivated. Cassius, red-faced, shouting at the foreman, Kaisa trying to calm him, looking nervously at the neighbors' houses. The public spectacle unnerves them. Their perfect, hidden world has a crack. Xenia deepens the crack. She uses the smart home system, which Cassius never bothered to learn, to orchestrate a haunting. At 3 a.m., Lucian's favorite Billie Holiday album plays at a whisper through the whole house audio. The thermostat in their bedroom plummets to 50 degrees. Motion-activated floods light up the garden, revealing nothing. Cassius starts to drink more heavily. Kaisa's flawless composure develops a brittle edge. They begin to snipe at each other, the stress fraying their alliance. Xania knows their greed will force a final, desperate move. They need liquidity, especially if they sense the walls are closing in. They'll go for Lucian's legendary emergency cash, the gold coins and bearer bonds he was rumored to have hidden in a safe within the estate. Xania prepares the stage. She returns to the mountain, entering through the old root cellar she'd shown Lucian as a quaint feature when they bought the place. She makes her way to the hidden control room. The server is still running. They never found it. On the monitors, she watches them. They're in no library, poring over old architectural plans. They've found the discrepancy in the wall thickness near the study chimney. The vault.
It has to be here. This is it. This is what he was always hinting at. Then we take it tonight and we disappear. This harassment, the calls, the systems acting up, it's her. She knows. Xenia? Don't be absurd. She's a ghost haunting her own life. After we have the gold, we'll deal with her. Permanently. A grieving widow, alone in that big Atlanta house. Accidents happen. The casualness of the threat freezes Xenia's blood, then melts it into white-hot resolve. She watches as they gather tools from the shed, a sledgehammer, a crowbar. They are giddy, like children on Christmas morning. The promise of gold has made them reckless. As dusk falls, they begin their work in the study. The sound of splintering wood and crumbling plaster is loud in the quiet house. Xenia picks up the estate's landline, an old wired phone that still works. She dials Cassius's cell. On the monitor, he stops mid-swing, annoyed. He checks the caller ID. It reads, Estate Study. His face goes slack with confusion. He answers, "Hello?" Xenia uses a voice modulator on her laptop, connected to the phone line. The voice that comes out is a low, digitized whisper, genderless and alien. "You seek gold in a tomb. The treasure is gone. You traded a soul for ashes." She hangs up. On screen, Cassius stares at the phone. He shows it to Kaisa. Their celebration is over. Fear, cold and sharp, has entered the room. "Who was that? How did they call from inside the house?" They know. They know what we're doing." The argument that follows is vicious. They turn on each other, the stress and fear boiling over into rage. Cassius accuses Kaisa of being sloppy, of talking to someone. Kaisa screams that his greed has drawn attention. He shoves her. She stumbles into the wreckage of the wall, a cut opening on her forehead. The perfect partnership is now a battleground. Xenia makes her final move. Earlier, she had reached out to Detective Alvarez, a contact from the city anti-fraud task force Lucian had once supported. She'd met him briefly at a fundraiser. She called him, played him a sanitized clip of the audio, omitting her own trespassing, showed him the pharmacy records. He was cautious but intrigued. The name Blackwood carried weight. Now, she texts him the address. "Come now. The killers are here. They're confessing. Bring backup." Then she does the bravest and most dangerous thing she has ever done. She leaves the hidden room. She walks calmly down the main staircase and stands in the doorway of the ruined study. The sound of her footsteps on the hardwood makes them spin around. For a moment, there is only shock. Then Cassius's face contorts into a snarl. Kaisa's shows sheer, undiluted panic. "You. My house. You've made a mess of it." Kaisa, recovering, forcing a smile. "Xenia, darling, you startled us. We heard a noise. We thought it was an animal in the walls. You were just looking for the gold you murdered my husband for." The words hang in the dusty air. The pretense is over. "You're hysterical. Grief has twisted your mind. You should be in care." Xenia ignores him, looks at Kaisa. "Was it the house, Kaisa? Or was it him? Did you love Cassius so much you helped him kill the better man?" Kaisa's mask shatters. "Love? Don't be pathetic. This was about survival, about getting what was owed. Lucian was a bottleneck. He held everything tightly, doling out scraps. He pitied you, and he tolerated Cassius. We were tired of living on tolerance and pity." "Cassius, shut your mouth."
Why? She knows. She's always known deep down, the little mouse. Yes, Zenea, yes, I swapped his pills. I watched him get weaker, paler, more confused. I sat with you and told you it was grief while I was counting the days. And she points a shaking finger at Cassius, he provided the poison. He handled Evans. He planned it all. He said it would be like falling asleep. You bitch, you were the one with the books. You found the foxglove. You said it was perfect. They're screaming at each other, the full truth tumbling out in a torrent of mutual blame and hatred. The murder, the cover-up, their plans for the money, their contempt for Zenea, it is all there, a perfect, passionate, witnessed confession. At that moment, Detective Alvarez and 4 uniformed officers step into the doorway from the hall in the terrace, weapons drawn. Alvarez's jacket is open, a wire clipped to a shirt. Cassius Blackwood, Kaisa Solano, you are arrested for the murder of Lucian Blackwood. You have the right to remain silent. The scene dissolves into chaos. Shouts, the metallic click of handcuffs, Kaisa's raw, screaming sobs of, "It was him! It was all him!" Cassius's guttural roars of betrayal. Zenea does not move. She stands in the center of the room, amidst the plaster dust and splintered wood, watching as the 2 pillars of her betrayal are led away into the flashing blue and red night. The silence they leave behind is immense. It is not the silence of grief. It is the silence of a storm that has finally passed. Time becomes a montage of legal proceedings. The trial is short. The evidence is overwhelming. The pharmacy records, Evans's testimony, the security footage of them living in the house, and most damningly, the recording of their own confessions, both the one in the vault and the one shouted in the study, which Alvarez's wire captured perfectly. Cassius, his arrogance finally broken, is sentenced to life without parole. Kaisa, pleading a doomed case of coercion, receives 30 years. Their social world evaporates overnight. They become ghosts. The estate does not sell. Zenea has the damaged study wall repaired. She has every piece of furniture they touched removed. She repaints. She replants a section of the garden. One crisp autumn day, a van arrives. Workers install a new sign at the gate. The Lucian Blackwood Foundation, a retreat for advancing botanical research and conservation. Lucian's true passion, aside from her, had been his roses. Now the estate becomes a living legacy. Graduate students and horticulturalists come to study the rare species he cultivated. The gardens are open to the public 1 weekend a month, the proceeds funding scholarships. Zenea does not move back, but she visits often. She oversees the foundation's work. She finds a quiet purpose in nurturing life from the soil where so much death was plotted. One crisp autumn day, she stands in the rose garden. The Eden climbers have scaled the stone wall, a cascade of apricot blooms against the gray. A young researcher, a woman with bright, curious eyes, approaches her.
Researcher, Ms. Blackwood, we've identified a completely new symbiotic fungus in the root system of the moonlight teas. It seems to be what made them so resilient. Lucian, he must have suspected. He was onto something truly special. Zenea touches a velvety white petal. For the first time in 2 years, the memory of Lucian brings a smile that isn't tinged with immediate pain. It brings a sense of continuity, of his mind, his curiosity, living on in these blooms, in this earth. He always said the most interesting things were hidden beneath the surface. The strongest roots are often the hardest to see. She looks out at the mountains, the same view Lucian loved. The mist is rising again, but it no longer feels like a shroud. It feels like a veil, delicate and transient. The house behind her is no longer a mausoleum. It is a library, a laboratory, a place of growth. The ghosts have been exorcised, not by flight, but by truth, and by turning a place of poison into a place of healing. She takes a last, deep breath of the rose-scented air, then turns and walks back inside, not as a widow visiting a grave, but as a steward walking into the future. 1 year later, the estate's kitchen, once a stage for Kaisa's performance of domesticity, has been transformed. The clinical stainless steel remains, but it's now accented with warm wood shelves holding jars of dried herbs, labeled in meticulous handwriting. Botanical illustrations are pinned to a corkboard. A long farmhouse table is scattered with seed catalogs, soil pH testers, and a half-drunk mug of tea. Zenea stands at the commercial-grade stove, stirring a large pot of fragrant soup. She wears practical canvas trousers, a simple tunic, and a headscarf tied back. There's a new ease to her movements, a physical strength gained from hours in the garden. Sophia, the 20-something researcher from the autumn before, bursts in from the garden door, her cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. Zenea, you have to see this. The Rosa sericea from the Himalayas, the one we thought was a complete loss, it's putting out a new cane, a green one. Not spot black, not dieback, just pure, stubborn life. Zenea's smile is genuine, reaching her eyes. It's a smile Sophia has come to recognize as reserved for moments of quiet victory in the garden. Lucian always said that one was a fighter. It just needed the right conditions and a little patience. Sophia beams, but her expression sobers slightly. The delivery van from the lab is here. They've got the full soil analysis back from the north plot, the one near the old oak. A subtle tension enters Zenea's shoulders, a faint echo of an old chord. The north plot. That's where Lucian had been experimenting with a new mycorrhizal fungus blend. It's also the plot Cassius and Kaisa had neglected, focused as they were on the showy roses near the house. I'll be right there. She turns off the soup and follows Sophia out. The transition from the warm, herb-scented kitchen to the bright, sharp cold of the late winter garden is bracing. The plot is more of a wild, semi-wooded area transitioning into the forest. Lucian had been trying to cultivate native, shade-tolerant species here. It's ragged, beautiful, and untamed. The delivery man hands Zenea a thick envelope. She thanks him, and he drives off. Sophia hovers, curious. Zenea opens the report, her eyes scanning the dense columns of data, mineral content, organic matter, microbial activity. Then she stops. Her breath fogs in the air, hanging perfectly still. Is everything okay? The pH is off, isn't it? I told them the sampling might have been too close to the runoff. The heavy metals analysis. Sophia takes the report, her own eyes widening. The levels of arsenic and lead are not just slightly elevated, they are orders of magnitude above what could occur naturally in this region. The contamination is localized, concentrated in the top 6 inches of soil, the layer Lucian would have been working in, kneeling in, his hands buried in the earth. This is toxic. This isn't agricultural runoff. This is deliberate or industrial, but there's nothing industrial for miles. Zenea's mind is no longer in the garden. It's racing down a dark, familiar path. Lucian was killed by poison administered internally, but what if that wasn't the only poison? What if the land itself was part of the plan? Lucian had complained in his final months of unexplained rashes on his hands and forearms, headaches that came after long days working this plot. They'd blamed stress, the new fertilizer, allergies. They didn't just want him dead, they wanted the land. But if the land was contaminated, it would be worthless. Unless what? Unless the contamination was discovered after they owned it. A tragic, expensive environmental discovery on a newly acquired property, one that would trigger a massive insurance payout, or a lucrative settlement from a previous owner they could blame. Sophia pales, understanding dawning. You think they were poisoning the land, too? Zenea doesn't answer. She's already walking, briskly, back towards the house. Not the main house, the old stone tool shed at the forest's edge, which Lucian had used as a potting shed and informal lab. The shed is a time capsule of Lucian's last year. Pots are stacked, bags of soil amendments lean against a wall. On a rough wooden bench sit notebooks, their pages warped from humidity. Zenea goes straight to the notebooks. She knows his system. The black one is for daily observations. The green one is for experimental data. She opens the green one to the last entries. His handwriting, usually so precise, becomes jagged, shaky in the final weeks. Notes on yellowing leaves on the trilliums, stunted growth in Hydrangea quercifolia.
Them, a single, underlined sentence written with such force the pen tore the paper. Soil sample number 7 to independent lab. Suspect adulteration. Compare to baseline number 1, archived. C has key to shed. C. Cassius. Lucian had suspected. He'd taken a sample to an independent lab, he'd archived a clean baseline sample, and Cassius had a key. Zenaya's hands are steady as she flips back through the book, looking for the mention of the independent lab. She finds a name scribbled in a margin, Piedmont Environmental Analytics, a phone number. She pulls out her phone, not the Foundation's phone, but her personal one, the one with the encrypted messaging app she'd started using after the trial. She takes pictures of the notebook pages, then she calls the number. It rings and rings. Finally, a recorded message. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. A dead end, or a closed one.
I need you to do something for me. Carefully. Anything. Take fresh samples from this plot and from the archive sample location he mentions, probably the original soil stored down in the root cellar. Get them analyzed at a different lab, one in another state. Pay in cash from the petty fund. Don't use the Foundation's name. Use a pseudonym. Sophia nods, her earlier excitement replaced by solemn understanding. She's no longer just a researcher. She's been drafted into a quieter, colder war. What are you going to do? Zenaya closes the notebook, holds it to her chest. I'm going to find out who really owns the ground under our feet. Zenaya sits at a carrel, surrounded by heavy, leather-bound volumes of county property records. The air smells of dust and old paper. On her laptop screen, she navigates a labyrinthine corporate registry website. The trail is deliberately muddy. The Blackwood estate is owned by Eden Holdings, LLC. Eden Holdings is a subsidiary of Blue Ridge Heritage Trust. The trust's listed address is a P.O. box. Its registered agent is a law firm so prestigious its name is engraved on half the buildings downtown. But Zenaya has time, and she has Lucian's meticulous mind. She cross-references, follows tiny threads. She finds that Blue Ridge Heritage Trust was established 6 months before Lucian's death. Its initial funding came from an offshore entity she can't trace, but its first major acquisition was an option to purchase a large adjacent parcel of forested land from the county, land that had been tied up in a conservation dispute. The option was contingent on the resolution of certain existing tenancies. Tenancies, like the Blackwood family's ownership of the estate. It wasn't just about her house, it was about a land package, a development. Her estate was the key that unlocked thousands of acres, and someone had been preparing to buy it all long before Lucian was in the ground. Her phone vibrates, a text from Sophia. New lab confirmed. Heavy metal contamination in North Plot only. Signature matches industrial mining tailings, not local. Archive sample is clean. Report under J.S. Smith. Industrial mining tailings. How would Cassius, a playboy with a business degree, get his hands on industrial waste? And why bother when he was already poisoning Lucian directly? Unless Cassius wasn't the only architect. He was a tool, a frontman, the face of the greed, while someone else, someone with knowledge and access, handled the landscaping. She thinks of the perfectly maintained garden when she first returned. That wasn't Cassius's work. He didn't know a rose cane from a walking stick. That was Kaisa. Kaisa with her green thumb, her encyclopedic knowledge of plants, and their properties. A terrible, chilling symmetry emerges. Kaisa handled the botanical poison for Lucian. Who handled the geological poison for the land? Kaisa looks older than her years. Prison gray does nothing for her complexion. The vivacious, charming friend is gone, replaced by a sullen, watchful woman. But when she sees Zenaya through the glass, a spark of the old malice ignites in her eyes. She picks up the phone on her side. To what do I owe the honor, Zenaya? Come to gloat, to see how your dear friend is managing? Zenaya picks up her phone, her voice calm. I have a question, Kaisa, about the garden. A flicker of surprise, then caution. The garden is yours now, as you made perfectly clear. The north plot, the soil. Lucian was testing it. He knew it was contaminated. Kaisa goes very still. Her eyes dart, just for a microsecond, to the guard in the corner. It's not fear of Zenea, it's fear of being overheard. She lowers her voice. He was paranoid at the end. The illness, it affected his mind. He sent a sample to a lab, Piedmont Environmental Analytics. The name is a key. Kaisa's carefully constructed prison wall composure cracks. Her knuckles whiten around the phone. That was Cassius's business, not mine. But you were the gardener. You knew what was in the soil. You knew it wasn't right. You had to keep the other roses so perfect. You were balancing it, managing the toxicity. Kaisa says nothing. She just stares, a silent admission. The lab shut down right after Lucian died. That's quite a coincidence. Some businesses fail. Or they're purchased and their records disappear. Who gave Cassius the tailings, Kaisa? It wasn't his style. He was a financier. This was industrial. Who did he introduce you to? Kaisa's lips press into a thin, bloodless line. She looks at Zenea with a mix of hatred and a new grudging respect. The mouse has grown not just claws, but a brain. You think you've pulled up the root. You haven't. You've just trimmed the weed. The root is older, and it's buried in very clean, very rich soil. Let it lie, Zenea. You have your house. You have your foundation. Let the past stay buried. It's a warning, not a threat, but a genuine warning from one survivor to another. It's not buried. It's in my soil. It's in the land Lucian loved. I can't let it lie. Kaisa leans forward, her face close to the glass, her voice a venomous whisper. Then you'll end up in the ground with him. They don't get their hands dirty. They hire people like Cassius. They charm people like me. And they erase people like you. The report on that lab didn't just disappear. The technician who processed Lucian's sample disappeared. A hiking accident. Very tragic. She leans back, the ghost of her old, cruel smile touching her lips. Be a good widow, Zenea. Tend your roses, and forget you ever heard the name Piedmont. She hangs up the phone, stands, and walks away without a backward glance. Zenea sits, the plastic phone receiver buzzing dial tone in her hand. The victory of the trial feels hollow, childish. She'd beaten the pawns. She'd never even seen the players. The address is in a run-down commercial park on the outskirts of the city. The unit is empty, a for lease sign plastered across the dirty window. Zenea peers inside. Nothing but dust and frayed cables. She turns, feeling exposed. A man is watching her from the doorway of a neighboring unit, a transmission repair shop. He's in his 60s, grizzled, wiping his hands on an oily rag. Looking for the lab? Zenea startled, then recovers. Yes, they did some work for my late husband. The man nods, his eyes knowing. Gone over a year now, packed up overnight, owed back rent, left a lot of equipment too. Landlord sold it off. Did you know anyone who worked there? The man chews his lip, considering her. She looks harmless, a grieving widow. Kid named Leo Gutierrez. Good kid, quiet, meticulous. He was the one who actually ran the tests. The bosses were just suits. Do you know what happened to Leo? The man's expression shudders. Like I said, they packed up overnight. Don't know about the kid. Try the Union Hall, local 309. He was proud of that union card. The hall is a time-worn building with linoleum floors and the smell of old coffee. A heavy-set woman named Dolores sits behind a battered desk peering at a computer screen. I'm looking for a member, Leo Gutierrez. He was a lab technician. Dolores types, clicks. Her friendly expression fades. Gutierrez, Leo, status, inactive, notes, deceased. The word is a physical blow. Deceased? How? Dolores gives her a long, appraising look. Who are you to him?
His work. It might be related to my husband's death. I'm just trying to understand. Sympathy and caution war in Dolores's eyes. She lowers her voice. The official report says an accident. Fell while hiking in the Cahuta wilderness. Body wasn't found for a week. But Leo? He was a city kid, terrified of bears. He didn't hike. And he was working on something big before he died. Something that scared him. He came in here, asked about whistleblower protections for environmental stuff. Did he leave anything? Notes? A sample? Dolores shakes her head. Cops said his apartment was cleaned out, computer gone. But he had a sister, Maria. He was close to her. If he left anything for safekeeping, it would be with her. She writes a name and a neighborhood on a sticky note and slides it across the desk. Tread softly, honey. Whatever Leo stirred up, it got him killed. Don't let it get you, too. Maria Gutierrez answers the door with a baby on her hip. She has Leo's same serious, intelligent eyes. When Zanaya says Leo's name, the warmth in them dies. If you're another reporter or from the company, I have nothing to say. I'm not. My husband was Lucian Blackwood. I believe Leo tested a soil sample for him before he died. Maria's guard doesn't drop, but she steps aside, letting Zanaya in. The apartment is small, filled with the cheerful chaos of a young child. Photos of Leo are on the wall, graduation, holding his niece. He talked about that sample. He was agitated, said the results were off the charts, not just a little contamination, a dumping ground. He said the client, your husband, was a decent man, that he sounded scared on the phone. Leo was going to send him the full data pack. Then your husband died. And then Leo died. Maria's jaw tightens. She puts the baby in a playpen. He didn't go hiking. He was meeting someone. He told me he had a backup, a copy of the data, and the original sample vial, sealed. He said if anything happened to him, I should give it to someone who could use it, not the cops. He didn't trust them. Do you still have it? Maria walks to a small closet, moves aside winter coats, and pulls out a metal lockbox. She opens it. Inside is a thick envelope and a small, clear vial containing dark soil, labeled with Lucian's handwriting, sample number 7, N-plot, suspect A. Maria hands it to Zanaya. It feels like receiving Lucian's last breath. He said the company that owned the lab was a shell, but the order to bury the test came from higher up, from a company called Rockhaven Minerals. Big, quiet, old money. They own half the mountains, but you'd never know it. Rockhaven Minerals. The name is a keystone. It slots into place. A mining concern with a history of environmental violations, shielded by lawyers and political donations. They would have access to tailings. They would have an interest in large, contiguous tracts of mountain land, especially if mineral surveys hinted at undiscovered deposits. Cassius and Kaisa weren't the masterminds. They were the delivery mechanism. Cassius provided the access to Lucian and handled the financial pressure. Kaisa, with her botanical knowledge, understood poisons and could manage the garden, masking the land's illness while Lucian's body failed. They were the human face of a much colder, more patient entity, a corporation that treated people and land as extractable resources. Zanaya, holding the vial. Thank you, Maria. This is everything. Maria, her voice hard. Use it. Make it mean something. My brother was a good man. He believed in truth. It's all I have left of him. Zanaya sits at Lucian's old desk. Before her, Leo's data pack, with charts and spectrographic analysis proving the contamination, the vial of soil, Lucian's notebook, pictures of the pristine lab now empty, the union rep's statement about Leo's fear. She has the story, but she knows what happens to stories that threaten powerful hidden interests. They get buried, like technicians on hiking trips, like labs in the night. She can't go to the authorities. Not yet. The tentacles of an entity like Rockhaven Minerals reach too far. She needs a spotlight so bright, so public, they can't snuff it out. She opens her laptop. She doesn't write to a journalist. She writes to the board of the Lucian Blackwood Foundation, a board that includes a retired judge, a famous environmental activist, the head of the state's botanical society, and a popular crusading news anchor who'd been a friend of Lucian's. Her email is concise. It attaches the evidence. It does not make accusations. It poses questions. As stewards of Lucian's legacy, we face an ethical and environmental crisis. Our land is poisoned. The man who discovered it was murdered. The technician who confirmed it is dead. The trail leads to powerful shadows. Do we cover this up to protect the Foundation's reputation? Or do we use Lucian's legacy exactly as he would have, to expose a truth no matter how dangerous and fight for the land he loved? She hits send. The response is immediate and unanimous. The news anchor, Diana Cross, calls her within 10 minutes. Her voice is sharp, alive with the thrill of a real story. Diana, VO, Zanaya, this is monumental and terrifying. Meet me tomorrow. We're not just writing a story, we're launching an investigation. On air. A series. We'll call it Root Rot. Several months later, the plot is now a cordoned-off EPA cleanup site. Heavy machinery sits idle for the day, but around the perimeter, the work of the Foundation continues. Students are planting a buffer zone of sunflowers and mustard plants, phytoremediation crops that will slowly, naturally, draw the toxins from the soil. Zanaya and Sophia stand watching. The scar on the land is visible, but it is being treated, not hidden. It'll take years, maybe decades. We have the time, and now we have the help. She looks toward the house. A car is coming up the drive. Not a news van, a dark, unmarked sedan. Two people get out, a man and a woman in sharp, serious clothing, federal investigators. They approach Zanaya showing badges. They're from the Department of Justice, Environmental Crimes Division. Mrs. Blackwood, thank you for seeing us. The evidence you and Miss Cross uncovered, it was the thread. We've been able to pull it hard. Male investigator. Indictments are coming down next week. Several high-level executives at Rockhaven. Not for trespass or pollution, for conspiracy, fraud, and, based on new testimony we've secured about the pressure applied to Dr. Evans and the circumstances of Leo Gutierrez's death, we're exploring charges of racketeering and murder for hire.
The agents are professional, but there's a glint of satisfaction in their eyes. This is a career-making case. Cassius Blackwood and Kaisa Solano are being re-interviewed. The prospect of facing federal conspiracy charges on top of their state sentences, they're becoming remarkably cooperative about naming their contacts at Rockhaven. The root is being pulled, not by her alone, but by the sunlight she helped shine on it. After the agents leave, Zanaya walks alone to the one part of the garden untouched by scandal or cleanup, Lucian's original rose garden by the house. The Eden climbers are just beginning to show buds. She kneels, not to pray, but to feel the clean, healthy soil of this protected place. She thinks of Lucian, not in his final, painful days, but in his prime, on his knees beside her, showing her how to tell a healthy root from a sick one. See here, my love? The healthy one is firm, white, reaching out. The rotten one is soft, brown, and coiled in on itself. You can't save the plant by hiding the rot. You have to cut it out, all the way back to the good wood. It seems brutal, but it's the only way the rest can live. She stands, brushing the soil from her hands. The late afternoon sun slants through the pines, painting the mountains in gold and purple. The fight isn't over. The cleanup will last years. The legal battles will drag on. But the poison has been identified. The source is being held to account. And the garden, this real, physical testament to love and memory, is no longer built on a lie. She is not just a widow. She is a keeper of the truth, a guardian of the soil. And for the first time since the mist cleared on that first terrible day of her return, she feels the future is not something to be feared, but something to be cultivated. One clean, honest handful of earth at a time.
The air in the Blue Ridge Mountains held the sharp, clean scent of pine and thawing earth. A full year had passed since the verdicts, and the estate no longer felt like a crime scene. It felt, slowly, like a home again, or rather like a new kind of home. Zenea stood at the foundation's new commercial stove, stirring a pot of lentil soup rich with herbs from the greenhouse. The kitchen, once a stage for Kaisa's cruel performance of domesticity, was now a workspace of science and sustenance. Botanical samples dried on racks, and the long table was littered with soil maps and student papers. Sophia, her lead researcher, burst in from the garden, her face alight. "Zenea! The Rosa sericea! It's alive! A new cane healthy as anything!" A genuine smile touched Zenea's lips. Lucian said it was a fighter. It just needed patience. The victories here were small, living things, and she cherished each one. Sophia's expression sobered. The lab results are back, for the North Plot soil. A faint, familiar chill traced Zenea's spine. The North Plot, Lucian's final, troubled experiment. She took the thick envelope, her eyes scanning the technical jargon until they locked on a number, then a classification. Arsenic. Lead. Concentrations that didn't belong in a mountain forest. Concentrations found in the topsoil, the layer a gardener's hands would sink into. "This is deliberate," Sophia whispered, reading over her shoulder. Zenea was already moving, the report clenched in her hand. Her mind wasn't in the kitchen. It was tumbling down a dark, logical staircase. Cassius and Kaisa poisoned Lucian. But the land? Why poison the land you wanted to inherit? Unless you never intended to keep the land. Unless a tragic post-purchase discovery of massive contamination could trigger a staggering insurance payout or a lawsuit against a previous owner with deep pockets. She went straight to Lucian's potting shed, a time capsule of his last year. Dust motes danced in the slatted light. On a rough bench sat his green notebook for experimental data. She opened it to the final shaky entries. Yellowing in the trillium, stunted growth, suspect adulteration. Then a sentence that stole her breath. Soil sample number 7 to independent lab, suspect adulteration. Compare to baseline number 1, archived. C has key to the shed. C. Cassius. Lucian knew, or at least he feared. He'd sent a sample to an independent lab, he'd archived a clean sample, and Cassius had a key to this very shed. She photographed the pages, her hands steady. The lab was named in a margin, Piedmont Environmental Analytics. She called the number from her own, secure phone. A recorded message told her it was disconnected. The trail was cold, but the soil was still hot with poison. She turned to Sophia, who had followed, hovering in the doorway. "I need you to take new samples, from this plot and from the archive location, probably the root cellar. Send them to a different lab, out of state, pay in cash, use a pseudonym." Sophia nodded, her youthful face set in lines of grim understanding. "What will you do?" Zenea closed the notebook, holding it to her chest like a shield. "I'm going to find out who really owns the dirt under our feet." The search led her to the dusty silence of an Atlanta law library, then into the labyrinth of corporate registries. The Blackwood estate was owned by Eden Holdings, LLC, a shell within a shell. But Zenea, with Lucian's meticulous patience, followed the money. Eden Holdings was a subsidiary of the Blue Ridge Heritage Trust, established 6 months before Lucian's death. The trust's first major action was securing an option to purchase thousands of adjacent forested acres from the county, an option contingent on the resolution of certain existing tenancies. Her estate, her home. It was never the final prize. It was the key that unlocked a kingdom. Her phone buzzed. Sophia's text was succinct. "New lab confirms. Heavy metal contamination signature matches industrial mining tailings, not local. Archive sample, clean." Mining tailings. Cassius didn't know mining tailings from beach sand. Kaisa knew plants, not geology. They were pawns. Someone else provided the poison for the land. The visitation room at the women's prison was a study in bleak acoustics. Kaisa, in drab gray, looked diminished, but her eyes still held a glint of polished flint when she saw Zenea. She picked up the phone. "Come to gloat?" "I have a question about the garden, the north plot, the soil." Lucian was testing it. Kaisa's posture didn't change, but her knuckles whitened around the receiver. He was paranoid at the end. He sent a sample to Piedmont Environmental Analytics. The name was a key turning in a lock. Kaisa's eyes darted just for an instant to the guard. It was fear, but not of Zenea. That was Cassius's business.
You were the gardener. You knew what was in that soil. You had to keep the rest of the garden perfect. You were managing the toxicity. Kaisa said nothing, which was answer enough. The lab shut down after Lucian died. Some businesses fail. Or they're purchased, their records disappear. Who gave Cassius the tailings, Kaisa? It wasn't his style. Kaisa leaned forward, her voice a venomous whisper against the scratched glass. You think you've pulled up the root. You haven't. You've just trimmed the weed. The root is older, and it's buried in very clean, very rich soil. Let it lie, Zenea. It's in my soil. I can't let it lie. Kaisa's smile was a gash. Then you'll end up in the ground with him. They don't get their hands dirty. They hire people like Cassius. They charm people like me. The report didn't just disappear. The technician who processed Lucian's sample disappeared. A hiking accident. She hung up and walked away, a ghost in prison grays. The address for Piedmont Environmental Analytics was a vacant unit in a decaying strip mall. A man in a neighboring transmission shop watched her peer inside. Looking for the lab? Yes, they did work for my late husband. The man wiped his hands on an oily rag. Gone over a year. Packed up overnight. Kid named Leo ran the tests. Good kid. Quiet. What happened to Leo? The man's face closed. Triley Union Hall. Local 309. He was proud of that card. The Union Hall smelled of old coffee and floor polish. The secretary, Dolores, typed the name. Her face fell. Gutierrez Leo. Status? Inactive. Notes? Deceased. The word was a stone in Zenea's stomach. How? Who are you to him? His work might be related to my husband's death. Dolores lowered her voice. Official report says a hiking accident. In the wilderness. Leo was a city kid, terrified of bears. He came in here before he died, asking about whistleblower protections for environmental stuff. She scribbled on a sticky note. He had a sister, Maria. If he left anything, it would be with her. Maria Gutierrez answered her door with a baby on her hip. She had her brother's intelligent, wary eyes. If you're from the company... I'm not. My husband was Lucian Blackwood. Leo tested a soil sample for him. Maria let her in. The small apartment was full of life and photos of Leo. He talked about that sample. He was agitated, said the results were off the charts, a dumping ground. He said your husband sounded scared. Leo was going to send him the full data. Then your husband died. And then Leo died. Maria's jaw tightened. She put the baby down, went to a closet, and retrieved a metal lockbox. Inside was a thick envelope and a small glass vial of dark soil labeled in Lucian's handwriting. Sample number 7, N plot, suspect A. He didn't go hiking. He was meeting someone. He said if anything happened, I should give this to someone who could use it, not the cops. He didn't trust them. Zenea took the vial. It felt like holding Lucian's last unanswered question. Who did this, Maria? He said the order to bury the test came from higher up, from a company called Rockhaven Minerals. Big, quiet, old money. They own half the mountains. The name settled into the puzzle with a final chilling click.
a mining concern with a history of quiet violations. They would have the tailings. They would want the land. Cassius and Kaisa were just the applied pressure, the human-facing tools. Rockhaven was the machine. Zenea sat that night in Lucian's study, the evidence arrayed before her, Leo's data, the vial, Lucian's notebook, the union statement. She had the truth, but truth against power needed a megaphone. She didn't write to a reporter. She wrote to the board of the Lucian Blackwood Foundation, a retired judge, an environmental activist, the head of the Botanical Society, and Diana Cross, the crusading news anchor who had been a friend of Lucian's. Her email was simple. It attached the evidence, and it posed a question. Do we cover this up to protect the Foundation's reputation, or do we use Lucian's legacy to expose the truth, no matter how dangerous? Diana Cross called within minutes, her voice electric. Zenea, this is it. Meet me tomorrow. We're not doing a story, we're doing a war. What followed was a controlled detonation. Diana's primetime series, Root Rot, began with a dramatic shot of Zenea holding the vial of poisoned soil in Lucian's garden. This is what he held before he died, and this is the report a young man was killed for. The spotlight was blinding. News vans clustered at the estate gates. The EPA, propelled by public fury, announced a major investigation into Rockhaven. Forensic geologists in hazmat suits took new core samples under the glare of camera lights. Zenea gave one interview, calm and unwavering. She spoke not of revenge, but of stewardship. Lucian believed the land held its own truth. My job is to be its witness. Months later, the North Plot was a cordoned-off EPA cleanup site. Around its edges, students from the foundation were planting sunflowers and mustard, phytoremediation crops that would slowly suck the poison from the earth. Zenea and Sophia watched the quiet, healing work. "It'll take decades," Sophia said softly. "We have the time, and now we have the help." A dark sedan came up the drive. Two federal agents from the Department of Justice, Environmental Crimes Division, approached. Their demeanor was professional, but there was a gleam of hard-won satisfaction. "Mrs. Blackwood, the evidence you uncovered was the thread. We've pulled it. Hard. Indictments are coming down next week. Rockhaven executives for conspiracy, fraud, and based on new testimony regarding the pressure on Dr. Evans and the circumstances of Leo Gutierrez's death, we're exploring racketeering and murder for hire charges." The male agent allowed a small, tight smile. "Cassius Blackwood and Kaisa Solana are being re-interviewed. Facing federal conspiracy charges has made them remarkably cooperative about naming their contacts." After they left, Zenea walked alone to the original rose garden, the part of the land that remained pure. The Eden climbers were budding. She knelt, not to pray, but to feel the clean, healthy soil. A memory surfaced, not of illness, but of Lucian in his prime, kneeling beside her, a rose cane in his hand. "See here, my love?" his voice echoed in her mind. "The healthy root is firm, white, reaching out. The rotten one is soft, brown, coiled in on itself. You can't save the plant by hiding the rot. You have to cut it out, all the way back to the good wood. It seems brutal, but it's the only way the rest can live." She stood, brushing the good earth from her hands. The scar on the North Plot was visible, but it was being treated. The fight wasn't over, but the poison had been named. The source was being called to account. The late sun gilded the mountain peaks. The air smelled of pine and the promise of rain. She was no longer just a widow tending a shrine. She was a keeper of the soil, a guardian of the truth it held. And for the first time since the mist had cleared on that terrible day of her return, the future felt not like a threat, but like a field after a long winter. Hard, certainly, but full of the latent, stubborn potential for clean, honest growth. They called it a heart attack, a tragic, sudden loss. For 2 years, I believed them. I buried my husband, Lucian, and tried to bury my grief with him. The mountain estate we loved sat empty, a monument to our shattered life. But when I finally found the courage to return, nothing was as it should be. The gates were polished, the house was spotless, and my husband's prized rose garden was in breathtaking, impossible bloom, as if he had never left. The security camera footage I found hidden in a secret room didn't just show trespassers, it showed a celebration. My husband's own cousin, Cassius, and my best friend since college, Kaisa, were living in my home, drinking his wine and toasting to a future built on his grave. And then I heard their confession. They didn't just steal my home, they murdered my husband. Slowly, deliberately, with a poison disguised as medicine. I thought exposing them would be the end. I was wrong. It was only the beginning, because the land itself was keeping a darker secret, a toxic truth buried in the soil that would lead me from a crime of passion to a conspiracy of corporate greed, from a lonely widow's grief to a fight against an enemy so powerful they thought they were untouchable. This is the true story of how I uncovered a double murder, one of a man and one of the truth, and how the legacy my husband left behind became the weapon to avenge him.